To give a bit of background, I'm Nat and I have ASD myself. I was diagnosed when I think I was about 3 or 4, so I was very fortunate to find out very early on. And to give a bit of a background of my journey, I didn't speak till I was like 5 years old, and I was in a, well, you might say a wheelchair these days, but it was basically a pram when I was like, I don't know, a young child, not because I couldn't walk, but because I found the world so overwhelming that I sometimes just needed to take a sit down or a break. And though I went to public school, I was always in the bottom sets and always had additional support. Though it wasn't until I got older when I realized it wasn't that I was not intelligent, it was because my brain worked and focused in a different way. And because I also have dyslexia, I started to experiment in different technologies and different methods and approach, which hopefully I'll be able to share with you some today. Now, this is by no means a definitive list. This is just the tip of the iceberg. But it's worth noting that there really isn't that much out there for those who have autism. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I just feel it's one of the neurodivergents that has less attention paid to it when it comes to finding comprehensive ways of navigating the world. Well, the reason we have these different 4 boxes is that exceptional individuals, we specialize in these 4, but there are others, and a lot of them are co-occurring. So for instance, it's not unusual to have dyslexia, dyspraxia, autism, have a whole cocktail of cognitive ways of thinking. Now, I recognize a few familiar faces today, but for those of you who are brand new to exceptional individuals, we have been going for about 5 years now, and we support neurodiverse individuals into the workplace and to maintain high-level employment. So just to give you a quick rundown, is that we help recruit diverse talent. So organizations which are going out of their way to find innovative problem solvers will help connect them up with those people. We also help those who are seeking employment get the job coaching they need. So more focused on the skills related to how their brain might work against the status quo and help them utilize that different perspective. Workplace needs assessment. So essentially, when someone starts a job, do they have everything they need to succeed? And that relates a lot to what we're speaking about today. And we also do a whole wide range of workshops. But what's really nice about us is that 80% of our team are all neurodiverse. And we thrive because of it rather than work against it, which a lot of organizations tend to do. So that's a bit about us in a nutshell, but feel free to check out our website and learn more. We're completely free for individuals and we work across the globe, but specialize in the UK because that's where we're currently based. Autistic assistive technology. Now, I want to give a bit of a definition about what I mean by technology, because quite often we think of like robots and them kind of like lifting our arm up, speaking on our behalf, taking over the world. But it really doesn't have to be. Technology is anything, from our definition, is the skills, methods, and process used to achieve goals. So this could be mentoring, coaching, could also be a form of technology, as it's an additional aid which allows you to achieve what you want to achieve. And normally I do focus on kind of like computers and gadgets and gizmos, but as mentioned, there just isn't that much available for ASD. So I had to broaden the box a little bit to include everything that I have found useful in the past to help me navigate a neurotypical world. Whew, some big words today. Well, I want to put a quick question to you. What assistive technology or any technology do you currently use on a daily basis in order to navigate the world? And relate it to autism if you can, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. Just any technology which helps you achieve your goals. So Lorna says Google Calendar. Yes, I would be completely lost without Google. Oh, Calm app. I've tried Calm There's like lots of like meditation, well-being practices, Google Maps. We've got drag and read feature. Yes, I'm a big fan of that. We've got Trello, Clear Talents, Clear Asserted, Zoom, mobile phones, mentoring, email, laptop, Office 365, cell phones, timer for cooking. Yes, definitely, even though I still end up burning everything. Old school paper and pen. Perfect. That's also an assistive technology.
Would having a cat be a way to cope? Because without the cat, I wouldn't get up in the morning.
That is a really, really good point, and absolutely. And we even do touch upon animals later on. My cat helps me navigate the world in terms of, you know, someone to care for, to wake up, for schedules. It helps mental health, well-being. Oh, nice. Jada says, I have an assistance dog who helps me. All right, Jade, I'm definitely going to need your opinion later on because I have a part about assistive animals, though I must say it's not my specialty, though I have had animals my whole life, even though they may not been the most trained. Cell phones, brilliant. Okay, these are really good. And I'm sure a lot of you may have noticed that these aren't just made for those who are neurodiverse. These are for everyone. And I think the definition of a really good bit of assistive technology is that it benefits the whole population and not just segregates a tiny portion. Whiteboards, nice, nice. I'm hoping today that you'll also teach me as much as I'm hopefully going to be teaching some skills to you. WAS, I haven't heard of WAS. I thought that was a car driving system. Headspace, I've used Headspace. I must say though, some of those apps, the accents don't agree with my ears. Oh, sensory issues. And if I'm really apologize if this imaging is a bit triggering. I realize it was like hypnotizing. Sensory issues are anything from the ears, mouth, eyes, touch, anything which allows us to take information from the world. And as someone who has autism, this can be a really challenging thing. It's quite typical for those who are autistic to have enhanced sensory receptors where everything seems really enhanced. Typically, sound is a really big one. Marina has said, are you also to help in getting the right help with my 20-year-old? Myself and others think we miss the signs of autism of Asperger's. People always ask us to help him if he is on the spectrum. Absolutely. I say get in touch with us. And what we normally do is, well, we always help people who are diagnosed and not diagnosed. If you resonate with having a different mindset to the typical, then we're always willing to help. Anna says, I have a tomato plant that grew up in my sink in the bathroom last June. It works as an antidepressant for me, and friends and I live alone. I like that. I've been doing a lot of gardening lately. Now, these are some things which can help people with autism with sensory information and taking it in at a more gradual rate. So we've got earmuffs, sunglasses, chewing gum, or stress balls, or like little fidget spinners. Have any of you ever used these to help to, I don't know, take off the glare on sensory overload? So I'm seeing here, a lot of people have used sunglasses. Now, this does mean, yeah, sometimes you look a bit odd wearing sunglasses indoors, but the world itself can be quite overbearing. And this isn't just to block out sunlight. It can be to take the intensity off. Like sometimes colors can be really bright and pulsating. Other times you might wear sunglasses for the eye contact. If people are always looking at you, when you wear glasses, it can kind of shine a bit of a blanket so you feel like there's less people watching you. A really cheap and really effective way of supporting yourself. And it fits in and it blends in very well with culture and society. Alternatively, some people with dyslexia have tinted glasses, which stops visual stress, which is also very common for those who have autism. The next one is a stress ball or a fidget. This is anything which you play with in your hands. It could be pretty much anything. And the reason why these can help people with autism is if there's a lot of things going on, the brain can get completely overloaded. But by having a different thing where it can put its focus in, it kind of unwinds. A lot of people with ADHD use use fidget spinners and bits and bobs. And this is because their brain is working a million miles per hour, and it's a good way to channel focus. As someone who has OCD tendencies, I use a lot of stress balls or fidget things to calm my mind down. If it's focused on something which is easy to contain, it's not spiraling off in other directions. So that's how it works for me personally, but I'd love to know how you'll find these sorts of things. Are they useful? Are they not? Personally, sometimes I found the fidget spinners a bit distracting, but what I just use my hands a lot, to be honest. It's quite common though. You've got to be careful, because if you end up like picking your nails or like biting them, it's better to use an object. Lorna says, I have just the smallest tint on my everyday glasses. Yeah, that's great. You don't even have to have a big one. Earmuffs are a perfect one. I don't know, April, I swear I've seen you with earmuffs before. Maybe. They're quite good because sound can be really amplified. And these just kind of give you a safe space. I'm a big fan of what I like to call nooks, like tiny little spaces I can get into, and I find it very calming and reassuring. So I might have a hat on, I might have my earmuffs, I might have glasses, and in many ways it creates like a barrier to the world. Oh, Zach says, by earmuffs, do you mean ear defenders? Yeah, Zach, are you American by any chance? It's one or the other. So yeah, ear defenders, any kind of fluffy thing that you can put on your ears that isn't necessarily a headphone. I think play piano with my hands all the time. I like that. That's a good one. Oh, okay, yes, April. And chewing gum. Now, chewing gum is a interesting one, and I do it quite a lot. It's just another thing which keeps one of your senses busy. The more that you're kind of either with your hands or your mouth or your eyes, something which takes some sort of energy or concentration means your mind isn't wandering off in another area. Now, the first thing I want to recommend, and honestly, I find this to be one of the best ones, is noise-cancelling headphones. Noise-cancelling headphones, for those of you who do not know, are like normal headphones, where they're able to take in an audio signal and play it into the ears, but they go one step further. They have a microphone on the outside which listens into the outside world, and it kind of like inverts the sound, and then it plays the opposite sound into your ear. And what that does, it kind of counteracts, so it makes it sound hopefully silent. It's really cool technology, actually, and it's getting better and better all the time. This is particularly useful for those of you who find the world so noisy. Like, you hear everything, cars going, the buzzing, the clankering, the chit chat, and you just want to be able to become really focused. With myself, I do like noise cancelling headphones, but sometimes I can find it really eerie that there's no sound at all. So thankfully, there are like little switches on it, on a lot of them, where you can choose the intensity on how much it's eliminating. But between you and me, I just like wearing them. I don't even have them turned on, because what it does, it tells the outside world, don't talk to me right now, I'm busy. And it's a good way to allow me to focus without people interrupting me every 5 seconds. So headphones, now to give you an idea of price, now apologies to those of you who aren't in the UK, but I'm sure you can do your own conversions. You can get them for about £30, okay? But FYI, they're terrible. Do not get the cheap ones. If you're getting noise cancelling headphones because you want to silence this busy world around us, you will want to get a decent price ones. I personally think you can't get good ones for under 150, but if you do know any good brands, please let me know. Sandeepa says, which brand of headphones are good? That's a big old question. I think normally you can go by price to a certain extent, because the cheap ones, you'll hear like a slight buzzing, or it will be able to block out some sounds, but other different frequencies will not be blocked out. I definitely recommend going into shops when they're open and trying the different headphones out and see if you agree with them or not. Katie says, I play music I've listened to a lot, real loud. Does that count? It does count, but I will say in a minute why there's pros and cons to that. Lorna says, second-hand Sony MRDs 1000. Okay, that's a good brand. I got some for £50, and I'll be honest with you, they weren't very good, so I ended up having to upgrade. That's the only reason I recommend going a little bit higher if you're able to. Now, here are some of the pros of noise cancelling headphones. Remember, none of these are for everyone, but these are some common pros. April has said, I agree with the cost factor. The ones I had was £30 odd and died after a short time, but I could try a higher price. Yeah, I mean, I never like to recommend things that are too expensive, but on this occasion, it does make a difference. So what are the pros? Well, the pros are active noise cancellation. They are always listening, which sounds creepy, and they're always taking in the world and turning it. You don't have to do anything. You just turn the on switch on, put it on your ears, they're doing magic. You have toggled cancellation. So if you're finding the world with the headphones on a bit too creepy, that you're looking around and you're not hearing anything, you can adjust the intensity. High volume, not required. It doesn't have to be really loud. Oh, Katie. So Katie, who said she listens to music really loud. That is something which I do, but it's not a good thing to do because it will damage your ears. So that's why maybe not. Okay, ideal for traveling. Good thing with noise cancelling headphones is you can take them wherever you go. I always have a pair of headphones in my backpack just in case, because autism isn't like a continuous thing. Hear me out on that. It can affect you some days more than others. Some situations I feel more sensitive to sensory information. Other days I feel completely fine. But obviously autism is a lifelong condition. So this is why I good just to have them in my backpack, just in case, may not even use them. Now, cons, because not everything is great. See, Pingo here is having a great time, but it's probably going to damage his ears, if he has ears. The biggest con is that they use a lot of power. They die quite easily and they require like batteries or charge. They also can be quite heavy. So if you're very sensitive to weight and pressure, they may not be right for you. I find that I quite like the heaviness. Like I wear like really chunky boots, heavy coats. I love weighted blankets, which actually I didn't put on this list, but weighted blankets are another really great assistive technology for those with autism because it can make you feel really secure and comforted. You need power, I've said, risk of hearing loss. And this is a really important one because though you are hearing nothing, you are actually hearing sound. Because remember how I said how they work? They take the outside world and they play the opposite sound in your ear. So even if you are not hearing anything, no music playing at all, your ears are still having auditory signals being pumped into the ear all day long. So I wouldn't recommend using the cancelling feature all day long, every day. And this is something which a lot of they never tell you about. You are still listening to sound. Marina has said, a friend recommended compression sheets and her children sleeps well. Now my daughter lives pressure applied. Okay, like just there, nice. And cost, they are very expensive. All right, service animals. This is something which I would love to have your information on. Now, before I go on to this cute little dog, Vicky has said, can you still hear people speaking? Would they be useful in schools, for example, to cancel out unnecessarily voice, but still be able to focus on the teacher? Or is there something that does do this? So, Vicky, I can only speak from my experience, but you can still hear voices. It normally gets rid of the unnecessary sounds, so like the buzzing or the hums. Maybe if you have it up really high, but normally there are different settings. Depending on how expensive they are, you can get ones and have like different presets. So listening to people or removing humming sounds. So yeah, they absolutely can. Now, before I drive you all crazy with this adorable dog, assistive animals they could be dogs, cats, any sort of animal which allows you to navigate the world. Now, on here, if you were to buy them like fully trained, and there are websites on the National Autistic Society, they recommend a autism assistive dog site, but they can be about 15,000 to 30,000 as a very, very rough estimate. This can vary dramatically. But there are also sometimes grants or funding available where they can be completely free. Alternatively, you could just get a normal animal, one that, isn't able to open doors. Jade says most autistic people have to own, train, and organizations don't train them for adults. True. Zach, is it perfectly legal in the UK to own, train, and assist? Yeah, you're perfectly allowed to train an assistant dog. Unless I misunderstood you. Catherine, I've just been on Dogs for Good training to train my own dog for my son. Very nice. Lauren, I'm on the search for a suitable dog to train right now. Brilliant. Oh, they're good for getting on trains. Had a pet chicken, so comforting, and a very social animal. Yes, Katie, chickens are sociable, but annoying if you accidentally get foxhole, which I did. Eve has said, I have a cat that helps me calm down, but I would like to have a dog to help me with my hypervigilance. Brilliant. I truly think, because with autism, quite often it's a deficit in maybe social activities, but all humans still require that bond, and animals are perfect. They also help you get up each day. They help with responsibility. I think you do not have to go for a fully trained dog, which is able to turn lights on and off or help you cross the road. Sometimes.
Sorry to interrupt. Can I ask a question? You mentioned when you were saying heavy blankets. What's the other bits you added to that? I missed some of that.
Oh, the weighted blanket. That was because the pressure kind of like it sucks you in. It kind of like gives you a big hug. But to give you an idea, weighted blankets can cost around about £60 onwards. They're quite expensive. But honestly, I've got one over there and I absolutely love it and I use it every night.
Okay, it's fine. Thank you.
Oh,
Thank you.
Yeah, okay. Thanks, Fazana. Sorry, I didn't see that hand up there. Ink says, in many ways, a regular dog may serve the same purpose, but you may not be allowed to take him or her with you into shops, cinemas, and cafes. That is a really, really good point. So again, what are some pros and cons? Pros. They encourage healthy sleeping patterns. A well-trained dog would be able to nudge you and say, all right, time for bed now. Maybe not verbally, but you get the idea. They can also help you calm down. They've been found that like being able to stroke them can be very therapeutic. They can encourage participation in daily activities. So an example is they need to go for walks. Go for a walk with them. Maybe you have a set routine when you're meant to do yoga each day. The dog will know the routine and be able to support you with that. Bear in mind, though, this all goes down to how well trained the dog is. Independent living. A lot of people who are adults with autism might struggle with living independently, but having a pet to care for and also care for them in a way can be a really good way to help them have that extra independence, even if it's not full-time, just a little bit. I've got lots of rabbits in the garden, and each day I get up, I tend to the rabbits, I put them to bed, I check up on them in the day, and it breaks my day up into nice routines. They can also help you access medical services, so take you to the doctors. But there are always cons, of course. And it might not just mean that they help you, what is that, like going down the stairs with your grandparents? So they make a hidden disability apparent. Now, this one might be a bit controversial, I'm not sure, but autism you can't see it. Maybe sometimes you can say you can, but typically you could look at someone and you wouldn't have any idea. The second you have a dog which has like the badge on or like a special kind of like band, it automatically tells the world that there is a disability that dog is supporting you with. Now, this may not be an issue for a lot of you, but it's definitely something worth taking into consideration, that it does highlight something which otherwise may not be apparent. Zach says, there is a lot of confusion and misunderstanding around assistive dogs. Highly recommended the following 2 Facebook groups. Thanks, Zach. The Assistive Dog Education Project, the Associated Podcast, and UK Owner Trade Assistant Dogs Campaign for Change. Thanks, Zach. That's really helpful. Katie says, I volunteer as a steward at my local theatre but can not easily tolerate bright/flashing lights, gives me migraines, and loud sounds affects, but still need to be able to see the hearing and patrons and other stuff to effectively carry out my role. Any suggestions? Hopefully some of the things we mentioned today will be able to help, but we'll definitely come back and answer that in a bit more information because I feel that's a bit of a longer question. Jade says, I found having an assistant dog, sometimes I feel a sense of imposter syndrome. That's a really good one, Jade, because people always assume that you're more disabled than you actually are, or they assume there's a visual impairment. I think that's just a lack of understanding around the public, but I can totally see where you're coming from. Daniel Drake, my cat knows when my arthritis is very painful. She helps me get out of bed. She puts up the weight on it when she takes the edge off the pain. Perfect. Nicole is sadly allergic to fur. Now that is an issue, but you can get hyperallergenic animals, ones that do not have fur or aren't as an allergic. But just so we're all clear, I'm not recommending everyone after this webinar goes and gets a pet. There's so many unwanted ones due to lockdown. So it's a very big, big decision. And as one of you already mentioned, you will have difficulties entering shops. Even if you have an official support dog, you'll get questioned nearly on a daily basis that you're not allowed dogs in here. You're not allowed llamas. Whatever assistive animal you have, people will have an issue and you will have to explain that to people. That isn't always a great thing for those who are on the autistic spectrum. Stress on relationship, what does that mean? Well, sometimes you can put more emphasis on the animal than others and people feel neglected. They feel that you're spending too much time with the animal. If those of you who have animals probably know what we mean by this. And lastly, but also very importantly, if you have a cute animal with you all the time, people will pay more attention to the animal than they will you. And that might not be a bad thing, but for some people, it might be that they don't want the added attention or they feel kind of almost jealous or left out from having that type of relationship. So these are just some of the things to consider. But if any of you are thinking down this route, this should be something that you never, ever take lightly. All right, moving on from cute animals now, though I could talk about them all day. Do any of you use any of these to stay organized? So do you use your smartphone, paper-based organizers, so paper and pen, a smartwatch, or none of them? Or maybe some others I haven't mentioned. Now, I would imagine most of you would say smartphone because, well, who doesn't use a smartphone these days? And without, mine tells me when I have literally everything and I have multiple reminders throughout the day. Other people, and quite a lot of you by the looks of it, prefers paper and pen. And this is because sometimes the physical action of writing down is another trigger to help the mind stay active and remember. There's also something quite nice about the original, like physical touch and feel, which paper gives. Interestingly, none of you use a smartwatch. I haven't gotten on the bandwagon yet because I don't know if any of you have this, but I can't wear a watch. I find too much kind of added things on me, like a real distraction. Like I can't wear rings or jewelry. I just want to like tear it off because I find the sensation of it just too much. It's not for me. Vicky says she has a whiteboard that she updates every day with schedules of her children. This is in addition to my phone calendar. Jubilee loves paper. And yeah, that's great. April says, I have an Apple Watch and a Fitbit, but I don't use them as often as my phone. I thought that's, when it comes to smartwatches, is it something which we think we want, but if we got it, we wouldn't actually use it? I like the idea, but for me, I don't like the idea of something touching my skin. Zach says, my household, 2 autistic adults, is literally covered in whiteboards. We get comments on it when people come in. Nice, I have whiteboards. I also have a cork board, blackboard, all different types of boards. I also use a lot of sticky notes, yellow sticky notes all over the place. Anna, Trello is so amazing for professionals and personal organization. Yes, I love Trello. At Exceptional Individuals, we use a service called Monday.com, which is like Trello, but has more advanced features, and that's great. My personal favorite is Todoist, which is a to-do list, but really simple, and it works on all my devices. Daniel Drake uses alarms on his phone to remind him to take his tablets. I've given up with watches as they seem to stop working or break within 8 weeks. Yeah, I actually woke up a bit late today because my alarm didn't go off. It sounds like such a cliche response, but it does actually happen. So when it comes to motor skills, these are like, physical movements. What tools out of these do you think can help or have helped you in the past? You've got wheelchair or scooter, computer keyboards, text-to-speech, tools designed for large grips. Now remember, motor skills are when you're just like more physical. And these are sometimes things which aren't normally considered when it comes with autism. But autism is very much a physical condition or way of thinking, whatever you like to call it, as it is a hidden one. And some of these may not seem apparent, but let me explain to you why they are. So I know quite a few people with autism who have wheelchairs or scooters, and yet they can walk perfectly fine. Myself, I had a children's wheelchair when I was, I think, 7 or 8. So like too old to have a pushchair, but it's still, people didn't get it, they didn't understand. And that's because when I was like shopping with my mum, and like if there was like really loud crowds or like a gathering or something would trigger me, I just would kind of collapse in a ball and I would rock. And that's a far cry from where I am now, but I've learned a lot of coping mechanisms. But having a wheelchair where I was able to like get in, curl up, made life so much easier for my mum. Now, I don't need it as an adult, but there's still many people who might have one just as a safety blanket, and that's completely fine. So remember, just because you have a service dog doesn't mean you're blind. Just because you have a wheelchair doesn't mean that you're not physically able to walk. Katie says, I put subtitles on everything I can, especially when others are talking. Yes, I'm a big fan of subtitles. It helps me, it gives me an extra thing to concentrate on. Eve Marie, I use an iPad all the time. I have 2 different keyboards depending on what I do. Really nice. Yeah, so keyboards. Using different type of keyboards. Now, it could be that they're spaced out in a different way to help your wrists. It could be that they have different flashing lights. Or it could be that they're made for those who have dyslexia. Daniel says his dyslexia has given him some real difficulties with catching balls or most hand and eye conditions. I found it playing console games has dramatically improved. Yeah, I use a lot of gaming as well to help with my hands. Speech-to-text programs, that's another good one. And again, not just for those who are dyslexic. A lot of time with autism, it can be about communicating effectively. So if you struggle with communication, think, is there a way that you can communicate in a way which works for you and convert it to a format which is more accessibly available to the general public? So it could be speech to text or text to speech. And I noticed that none of you have said tools designed for large grips. And maybe that's because I didn't explain it properly, but please let me know if any of you have had these. As a child, and even I had like special knives and forks, which had little grooves in where I could put my fingers to help me cut. And that's because I kind of had a really tight, awkward grip. So I'd be like stabbing my food, but this kind of like forced my fingers to have different positions. Or have any of you ever used those like grips for pencils that are like a triangle, and it kind of forces the hand to move more fluidly? Those are kind of what I was speaking about when it comes to like different types of grips. Oh yeah, so Marina says you got it. So yeah, all of these can make a really big difference. And admittedly, it took me a while to progress from my specialized cutlery to normal cutlery. But I always have it in my backpack. Again, my lovely backpack, it has everything in it, just in case. I always felt comfortable with tools and equipment that I was used to using. If you have used those before, how do you rate them? So these are some of the most assistive, some of the typical assistive technologies that are used for alternative ways of communication. Very commonly subscribed for those who are dyslexic, but can also benefit those who are autistic. Eva says, I have a hard time communicating emotions, which I see in terms of colors. My Theologist suggested that I get a bunch of paint samples to help. Any other suggestions? I really like that, different paint samples. Well, there are some softwares which can help with emotions that I believe we touch upon, so hold that thought. But Vicky has a good solution, that her children use picture cards with photos of different emotions. Oh, Laura, thank you. I love that we're all sharing ideas here. So the most useful seems to be spelling correct. No, mind mapping. Mind mapping is a really good one for those with autism because it's just a different way of communicating and getting your voice heard. But please bear in mind that everyone with autism is different. So what works for some of us will definitely not work for others. So I'm by no means saying that everyone who has autism should get a fluffy dog and mind mapping software. These are just some things that tend to work for those who have autism. All right, well, to give a quick overview, speech to text is when you're speaking and the computer writes out for you. Good example is Dragon software. I use that pretty much daily because it allows me to communicate at a way which matches my intellect. But if I was to write, more due to my dyslexia than anything, it's not great. Auto spelling correction. I'm an adult now. I'm not going to learn to spell well. I just want to get on with my day. And this allows me to not have to right click and change the spelling and just kind of glide through. A really good software for this is called Global Autocorrect, which is on Windows and Mac. But personally, I can only recommend it on Windows because I found the Mac doesn't work great. Text to speech. This could be like Claro, which some of you may have used, or the inbuilt Mac software.
Sorry, can I say something? Is that Windows 10? Windows 10?
Yeah, no, it works for Windows 10.
Thank you.
Text to speech is when you highlight the text and it reads it out to you. So if I was to highlight what Anna just said, typical, now I want it, won't work, but you can again inbuilt on Macs and also for PCs, I believe it's now built in, but you can also buy specialist software. And it says, can you share what was the software you mentioned for speech to text? So the speech to text software, Rennie, Anna, is called Dragon Dictate. And unfortunately, it's no longer available on Mac, but you can still get an older version, but it's very much updated continuously on Windows. The Rennie says Ginger software does a sense check as well as spell check. I like that. I use Grammarly a lot. All right, we talked about mind mapping. Personally, I use mind mapping software called MindView, and it's very similar to Office. So if you know how to use Microsoft Word, you'll know how to use this mind mapping software. A scanning pen is a physical pen, which you can kind of glide over written text and it will read it out to you. I use one called C Pen. The digital pen is a pen which you write in a normal book, but then it automatically converts it to your tablet or phone. And that's very useful if you're the type of person who forgets a lot. Like I'm always losing my book. And it's okay because I've got a backup on my trusty phone. The one I use is called LiveScribe, but you can also get different brands from like Moleskine. And lastly, a dictaphone. These are just a little device you can talk to. It can even be your mobile phone. And if you're the type of person who forgets things or needs it repeating to truly to comprehend the meaning, perfect. April says, the mind mapping software I used at uni was MindJet. I found it very useful for essay planning. Yeah, I think MindJet is one of the leading ones. I've not used it myself, but I know it's very popular. Other ways of organizing could be having tablets, daily planner, visual schedules, a calculator, or an egg timer. I have a little timer on my desk and it's for 15 minutes and I use it for each task. So I split all my daily tasks up to 15-minute increments. Now, hey, this is a big one on its own, and I'm going to mention mentoring and coaching. Why? Because though it's not a digital technology, it's also one of the best things that can support those with autism because it's a very personalized approach. Now, the main definition for me is that mentoring is short term, where coaching is longer term. Mentoring tends to be voluntary, where coaching tends to be paid. Mentoring The mentors tend to be the leader, like this is how we do it, where coaches tend to say, how would you do it? Mentoring is normally about personal experience. This is how I've done it in the past, where coaches will typically work with you to find your own answer. This isn't always 100%, and there's always different nuances, but this is a very basic way of knowing the difference between a mentor and a coach. Oh, April, that's a really good example about nonverbal autism. So types of coaching could be personal coaching. This is just helping with day-to-day life, caring, relationships, productivity. That you could get a career coach, which helps match different skills and suitable careers. A business coach, which is normally someone who is already in the organization or helping you in your job. Health coaching, which can help with lifestyle, well-being, which is very useful for those who have autism, as sometimes certain health or personal hygiene can sometimes be put to the side. Not always, but sometimes. Relationship coaching. And these are really important because it can be that just helping with internal relationships with your children, with your parents, with your partner. Because remember, people with autism, it's almost like we have a different language and it doesn't always kind of translate perfectly to our neurotypical partners or close people in our lives. So some of the pros when it comes to coaching is that there is someone listening to you, fresh perspectives to problems, questions your long-held assumptions that may not be valid, a safe place to examine vulnerabilities without repercussions. I highly recommend you speak to someone who you do not know rather than just family members all the time, because it's very different. There are some cons though, may not be immediately accessible for urgent issues. You can't always phone up your coach in the middle of the night. Some may be okay with that, but most will not. Recommendations may not always fit well. Remember, at the end of the day, it's a recommendation and not gospel. And also, they can cost an arm and a leg. But that being said, there's so many around that I'm sure you can find the one that will fit you well. But with all things in life, you get what you pay for. There's also some free ones you can get, which are done through grants or other organizations that pay. All types of mentoring: traditional mentoring, where you have someone senior mentoring someone more junior. Reverse mentoring, where you might be mentored by someone who may be in a lower position to you, but just has a different perspective on life. Peer mentoring, when it's someone at the same level as you. Aspirational mentor might be in a role or a position that you really want to be in the future. So let's take a typical example that we work with. A lot of people who have autism tend to want to work in the train industry. Don't know why, but they do. We might get them to speak with someone at TfL to talk about their role and what it actually means to work there. Practical mentor, someone who will physically teach you to do things, and maybe to care for yourself. It might be carpentry, it could be anything. Coping mentor, which is more about emotions and difficult situations. Identity, this sometimes could be around sexuality, but it doesn't have to be. So pros: confidence increases, hopefully avoid bad decisions, definitely helped me in the past. Honest feedback, increased experience. But the cons include mentors are often not really skilled to guide people. What I mean by this is they're just people who want to help out. They might not have any qualifications in being able to translate their experience to being able to help you directly. Fake gurus are a problem. So many people love helping, and they're like, oh, I'll help you, but they end up giving dodgy advice. Anyone can mentor, but maybe not everyone should. Really find someone who knows how to convert their real life experience into solutions that can help you. You can also get very dependent. That's another big one to watch out with those who have ASD, is that you get too reliant on the additional help. And sometimes personality clashes, you just do not get on, and it might feel a bit awkward in getting out of that relationship. Now, have any of you ever had any therapy? The word therapy, I think, strikes alarm bells in a lot of people's heads, but it really doesn't, it really shouldn't have to. Zach has mentioned, worth mentioning that disability mentors at university would fit your definition of coach. They are paid, qualified, etc. Yeah, completely. People, the terms are used interchangeably, even though there is a difference. Well, I'm not a professional when it comes to therapy, so I'm not going to go into it a great deal, but having a trained professional, which you can get through the NHS sometimes, is invaluable. Learning to speak properly at a younger age or even as an adult, having someone to help you with day-to-day activities, or just working through the stress of being neurodiverse. A lot of people who have autism also have mental health problems, and it's not because those two are one and the same thing. It's that living against the grain all your life is going to have impacts. So having someone to talk through those difficulties will make a big difference. And my last things I want to finish up with, and apologies, I'm probably going to go a little bit over time, but there was more content than I thought, is that one of the biggest things with autism is communication. So what are some alternative ways of communicating? As you can see, an image of a phone is a very typical one, but there are some others. So ACC high-tech solutions could be dictation software. A good company to look at is Dynaxox. I might have pronounced it wrong, but they do a lot of software about emotions and being able to communicate via pictures, which I know some of you have already mentioned. Very worth checking out. Personally, I think they're maybe for more of a younger audience, but they do have some which are more adult-based. Multi-purpose devices, so having different computers for different things. I have one computer which I just use for speaking to and writing out, so it's great at that, and I don't have to worry about it slowing down, and has all my programs on. And my other computer is for relaxation. It is expensive, I'm not going to lie, but if you have the means to, having different devices can really separate and help for like the speed, processing, loads. Some easy low-tech solutions could be British Sign Language or American Sign Language, whatever you propose. This isn't to say autistic people cannot speak, but they might feel more comfortable in talking in sign language. I probably butchered that if any of you do know sign language, but just learning a few simple hand gestures can really help, particularly if the individual or yourself just is not feeling in the right moment to talk. Boards, books, letter phrases or photos, notebooks and notepads. If any of you do know sign language, I'd be really interested to know how you use it in day-to-day life. And the last slide, which I think will be very, very interesting, are there any autistic assistive techs which we have missed that I don't even know about? I would love to know, and the next presentation I'll be able to add these and share these with more people.
Timer, like they're a lot of the kind of Instagram autism advocates are using and talking about that, and it looks quite good.
Okay, I'll give that a check.
Yeah, it's like a visual planning, a visual timetable. So, and they recommend using it with your smartwatch, so you get a picture.
Oh yeah, no.
Do an activity rather than the text.
I love any kind of different text, and I think it's only getting better and better. You've kind of got to try it though, all of these. Some said a Samsung Note X Mind for mind mapping. Nice. I have not tried that. Brain in Hand for organizing and planning. I've not tried that either. I'll definitely be going after this presentation and trying these out for myself. Deborah has said Echo/Alexa. That's a really good one. I love my Alexa. Don't want to say it too loud in case it sets all of yours off, but it's really good just to have sometimes just communicating, you know, back and forth. Tell me a joke. Timo, anytime I can, I'll text or send an email instead of talking to someone. Yeah, that's perfect. A really simple but effective way. April, I hope you don't mind me using you as an example, but you don't always want to communicate verbally, and that's fine, but you are an absolutely phenomenal communicator via email, and you're fantastic at blog writing. So it's just knowing, but where me, I'm more of a talker, not a great writer. So it's just about understanding each other. PECS is problematic. Simply using pictures to communicate is fine, but PECS specifically is essentially a form of compliance/conversion therapy. Do you know what, Zach? I don't know much about that, but that's definitely something I'd like to look into and understand. Autism is a very controversial subject because everyone has so many opinions and we are still learning so much about it. But I think the best thing we can do is understand that there isn't one right way to learn, and the more we share with each other, the better help we can get.
Can I add something? Yes, because sometimes we might talk about high tech, and I recently realized that putting clock, like old-fashioned clock, like I don't know if you see it, like this one, you know, like it's visible. So the numbers don't work for me. I have to see as a picture what time is it, and I put clocks like on my desk, in my bedroom, whenever possible, so I can manage time much better. Otherwise, I'm losing consciousness, like what the time. So it really helps. Like sometimes old-fashioned stuff also helps.
Yeah, I like that. We don't all have to become cyborgs in order to navigate the world. Like pen and paper can be great. And now I notice a lot of you are in the UK, and I would just like to spend a quick moment to note that if any of you are in the UK and have a job, there is a grant called Access to Work where you can apply to get a lot of this technology for free. So if that does apply to you, do get in touch. It's just called Access to Work, the grant, or you can do it via exceptional individuals and we can do all the paperwork on your behalf. Sadly, it's not available outside of the UK, but it's definitely worth knowing if that applies to you. And we also help organizations with navigating the complex world of cognitive diversity. So again, if that applies to you, we'd always love to have a follow-up chat. Now, that is all. Now, we are a little bit over, but if there's any burning questions, I'll do my absolute best to answer them. Lauren said, mindfulness ball, a wee ball ringing every 20 minutes or hour. I like that.
I'm the one that works as a steward, but I can't tolerate loud noises or bright or flashing lights very well.
Okay, so for that, Katie, I think, have you tried tinted sunglasses?
I don't really want to have to wear them inside though. They don't work. I found if it's dark and it's literally the stage that's like, they don't work that well.
I mean, it's a tough situation, and maybe someone in this group has a different solution, but I sometimes wear tiny little like earbuds in my ears, which no one else can see, but it just makes things a bit more quieter for the sound. And as for kind of light and flash and strobes, the only thing I can really suggest is tinted glasses, or maybe there's such a thing as tinted contacts, but that's a bit more invasive.
I have asked about contacts and they say they don't. I need to go to a specific company for what I'm asking for, because I've been to the opticians and they don't do what I want.
Well, Vicky said, could polarized glasses help reduce the glare rather than tinting? There are different ones. So you can get glasses which they look completely transparent and normal, but they can still like take away the glare. I think a lot of the time, hey, I don't know, but I do think trying different tinted glasses, different shades, and see how you get on. And when it comes to sound, try different earbuds, which some will allow you still to hear, but be able to like minimize the loud sounds.
Can you suggest any?
I would recommend you booking a one-to-one chat with exceptional individuals, and then we can kind of look through the processes and pros and cons. I do not think there's one answer that will fit all for this. I think it's something where it's like trial and error and trying things that work, and some will and some will not.
Okay, I have tried doing contact lenses, but I do struggle to put them in.
Oh, me too. I hate them. Well,
but in a way, I'd rather have them in so other people. I'm a bit not vain, but I don't want other people to see if you know what I mean. No,
I understand. Sometimes there isn't a great answer, and I wish I was able to give them. I think autism is inherently a different way of thinking, and we live in a world which thinks in a neurotypical way. You're always going to be going upstream. Now, as technology advances, I think things will get easier, but there'll also be new problems that arise. So it's about always learning, which all of you are doing, and keep adjusting and
Yeah.
changing.
Some of it might be my visual impairment as well, because I'm visually impaired, my ears will be keener than other people's.
No, that's true, but also ASD, it does enhance those senses. So guys, these are some further information if you want to get in touch. But all I must say, before we end, is that you've been an absolutely amazing group, one of the most interactive ones I've had, and you have shared so much amazing ideas. And if any of you want to contact separately and suggest further recommendations, please do. This is a sector which I think we all need to share our options and opinions, what worked, what hasn't worked, and eventually, well, hopefully we'll have like a nice database of things that can help us navigate the world in the most effective and efficient way possible. But with that, guys, I'll say goodbye now. But next week, we're doing a webinar called Do I Have Asperger's Syndrome? And it will be where we're looking through how the diagnosis and the different characteristics that are associated. And I think it's going to be a really interesting one. So thank you all. And you've been absolutely amazing. And I hope you enjoyed and got something from today.